Welcome to another edition of Speak Up Presents. Tonight we're going to be talking about Hillsborough River setbacks, which is a topic that just recently came up with the City Council, and probably not for the first time. And we're quite fortunate to have with us tonight Linda Saul-Sena, City Councilwoman. Welcome, Linda. I'm glad you could be here tonight.
Pleasure.
And Phil Compton, who is the regional representative for the Sierra Club and part of Friends of the River.
That's right.
Correct. Thank you for being here. Dianne McNeilly, from President of the Riverside Heights Civic Association. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Randy Barron, who's the past president and remains an officer of the Old Seminole Heights Neighborhood Association. So there's a proposal on the floor, or there's some discussion being had about river setbacks. Could you explain it,
Yes.
Linda, to us, and then everybody can jump in and comment on it as we go along? And you got a map behind it that you can tell us.
Thank you.
Okay.
I love props. Okay. This is a map of the Hillsborough River. And the reason that the issue came up of rivers of setbacks is that there's beginning to be what I call McMansions on the Hillsborough River. I love the Hillsborough River. I don't actually live there, as some of these lucky people do, but I've gone up and down on boats. And the sensibility of the river is, particularly once you get north of the Columbus Avenue Bridge, it's like old Florida. It's soft, it's inviting, it's beautiful, it's to use a Yiddish word, it's heimische. You know, it just feels very, it's like it embraces you. And so going up the river, you know, it's lovely, lovely, lovely. And then all of a sudden, there's one of these McMansions, these houses that are so large that they take down all the soft vegetation. It's all hardscape, and it's built within, 7 feet on either side of the side yard setbacks, and the rear yard setback, which is the distance between the house and the river, is 20 feet, but often that's filled in with a swimming pool and a deck and this and that. And then these McMansions often have these enormous boat houses that are 2 stories, that are stem to stern. So the whole sensibility of the experience of going up the river changes when you hit one of these McMansions. I used to be an urban planner before I was on City Council, and the reason that I ran was because I really care about the built and natural environment in the city of Tampa. So going up the river with friends, looking at these, we said, what can we do? And we realized that there's no particular zoning in the city that addresses houses on the river differently from houses anywhere else in the city. What's interesting about this map, and I don't know if you can see it in a detailed fashion, but there are a lot of really enormous lots on the river, like 600 feet in depth. So there's plenty of room for those houses in particular to be far set back from the river. And then there are other lots up here that are very small. So it's not uniform. I mean, the river runs for miles through the city, and it's a real eclectic scale of building envelopes. So the reason for this whole setback is to protect the river from McMansions. That's the...
Did you see a lot of them?
Did I see a lot? No, I've just seen a few. But let me tell you, I live on Davis Islands, as you used to. And I can tell you on Davis Islands, on the water, almost all the 1-story 50s houses have been torn down, and these enormous houses have come up because of the value of the property. People feel like if I spend a couple of $1,000,000 on a lot, I should build a house that fills every possible square inch of the building envelope. So my feeling was, because it takes the city forever to do anything, that we should start now before it's a huge trend and before we lose a lot of the tree canopy and before we change the character of the river so that it doesn't become a huge problem. Because I've seen, like in Fort Lauderdale, there are certain parts, canals on the water that are like canyons almost between, hardened shoreline and 3- and 4-story structures. And the whole impetus here is to try to protect what I think is a really extraordinarily magical character of the river.
I was reading an article that said that the setbacks now are between 5 and 20 feet. That just seemed odd to me. They're not uniform as they are right now, correct?
You mean the
article
reality or the law? The law is 20 feet. The reality is varied. Because, well, you have many things going on in Tampa, including the fact that until maybe 25 years ago, people paid no attention to the law, and a lot of the building on the river has been prior to that. But what I'm primarily concerned about is the new construction that's just gargantuan and that dwarfs the houses on either side, that requires the removal of the trees, and that just hardscapes everything and changes the character. And our building department has this really, in my opinion, foolish rule that swimming pools are counted as pervious surface because the rain can go into them. So they aren't even counted as hardscape. So you can have basically an entire paved backyard, and that's terrible for the health of the river because all the fertilizers run directly into the water, and it creates just a different sensibility. So this is really a very aesthetic argument, but I think aesthetics are important.
Who wants to jump in first here?
I'll jump in first.
All right, Dianne.
I just want to tell you somewhat, because not a lot of people are familiar with Riverside Heights and the location. We're west of MLK Boulevard, we're south of West Columbus Drive, we're east of North Boulevard, and we're west of the Hillsborough River. So we have, it's a big location, we have a lot of people. There's 1,400 homes, and 52 of those are actually Riverside residents. The thing that I have the issue with at this point is that at our last town meeting, our last association meeting, people were divided on this. I couldn't get to my neighbors. You know, there's 52 residents on the river, and there's all the rest are in the neighborhood. So you can see where there's the people are saying that aren't Riverside residents. Their concerns are more for the river, which we're Riverside Heights, so we care about the river. We do, but they're also our neighbors. So we have to, you know, think about them and see what they want. And I think that, and as a matter of fact, one of my neighbors I stopped and talked to over the weekend got the thrill of seeing two dolphins play in the river. So it is making a comeback. It's slowly but surely it's coming back, and we do. All of us care about the river, and we want it to make a full comeback, especially with the heights coming in and everything else. We want to make sure it's beautiful. But what we have going on is we got neighbors divided, and the fact that there wasn't any kind of notification done by the city to the older residents, I think the city needs to review that, because I had to basically go and talk to them myself, and they kind of knew about it, but they didn't know about it. And I've only been in office since August. I do have a degree from Ecker College in business management and experience as a manager. And with that knowledge that I have, I believe that we have to have the facts that will justify the approach that you're taking. And I'm hoping by this broadcast, we'll be more informed with what the views are of your setback. And
yeah, Linda, I want to say something on that too. I live on the river. I have 2 properties on the river, my home, and one 2 doors down that I'm hoping I can convince one of my sons to bring my grandchild here someday. But I wasn't notified in my mailbox or anything. There was a notice that someone sent, and a neighbor called me and said, "Did you see this?" And it was just a piece of paper that someone threw into the mailbox. It wasn't in an envelope or anything. And so we really didn't know about what was going on at all. And that seems odd to me, since if I want to take down a tree, I have to let everyone in the world know. You know, my neighbors on both sides, and the Civic Association, if I want to do certain things. And so it just seemed odd to me that we weren't informed. Do you know what happened?
I can tell you exactly what happened.
All right.
The city, there are many people who live on the river, and what the city staff did is they notified the presidents of the civic associations. There are 12 different civic associations that front on the river. They've notified, they had 2 neighborhood meetings in the neighborhoods to explain what was proposed, with the idea that the neighborhood civic association leaders would notify the residents. That was obviously unsuccessful.
Right.
What I promised to do, where this stands now legally, is it's not scheduled for moving ahead until we have some more meetings. And I volunteered out of my city council budget to send postcards to everybody who lives along the river, because somebody did some work and got all the addresses, telling them what's proposed, because everybody should be informed. The staff usually doesn't do individual mailings for zoning changes because there are so many zoning changes.
Yeah.
We take ads in the paper, and we really, thanks to the internet where the price is right, we really have been relying on the internet to let people, to let the civic association leaders know, and then let the people within the neighborhoods know. But I feel like I'm willing to pick up the tab on the mailing because it is so important to people.
How much notice did the heads of the civic associations have?
They had lots of, the women who are the planners, one of them is Catherine Coyle. She lives on the river. She's a really good person. She's like not a sneaky person. I mean, we weren't trying to do anything sneaky. So we had the 2 neighborhood meetings, and we had, the meetings at City Council. Mm-hmm. But the issue that came up before Council, which is, I really look forward to dialogue on how we can address this challenge, is the difference in the sizes of the lots. There are big lots,
Right.
there are small lots.
Right.
And basically, the protest that came out at council was that people with smaller lots were concerned that they would be able to build something.
When you say buffer zone, though, I don't think you explain that specifically. Like, it means you cannot build up to 30 feet if this is your suggestion.
My suggestion is
river.
no, that you can't have, I think, does anybody have the ordinance in front of them?
Yeah, it's a setback.
Setback.
A 30-foot setback.
Mm-hmm.
And the last 10 feet would be not landscape. They would be like more natural, Florida-friendly yard, so that you'd be protected against the runoff going directly into the river. And I just want to share with you that the setback in Temple Terrace is 75 feet. So ours is and our current setback is 20 feet. So what we're discussing is an increase of 20 feet to 30 feet with a softened area, a Florida-friendly area in the 10 feet that's closest to the water.
I still can't get over that the TBO article says setbacks for waterfront lots and other structures now range from 5 to 20 feet.
Well, that's the reality of it.
Not the law. The law is 20?
The law is 20. The
and
reality
the way they're
is,
writing this is just like, okay, it's between this and this?
There are certain kinds of setbacks. Some of those are accessory structure setbacks. Some of them are swimming pool setbacks, the current swimming pool setbacks. So that's probably what we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, the basic rear yard setback is 20 feet.
Okay, now, didn't we during Greco's term, didn't the city put a law in that commercial buildings had to be 23 feet setbacks?
that's not ringing a bell, but commercial buildings are different. This is
From
really,
the waters from the Hillsborough River.
I don't know what the
I just wondered why it would be greater for residences than it would be for that. But anyway, Randy, why don't you jump in here now?
Well, I mean, a couple of points. First of all, to get to the notice issue, and that's one of the big points that a lot of the residents are concerned about. Even though maybe some of the neighborhood associations had some notice and knew this was coming along, a lot of the residents had no idea. And frankly, the resources of a volunteer neighborhood association are limited to get the word out. I know Old Seminole Heights, we were lucky we had someone who, actually Susan Long, who was the president at the time, flyered all the riverfront properties, and she started getting email after email after email, not very many of them positive. A lot of it was just a knee-jerk reaction of fear. Oh my God, I'm going to lose 10 feet. What is that going to mean to me? Is my house value going down? What can I do? Oh, I was planning on building my swimming pool, and now I can't do it. Government, we're here to help, and they're not. We're here to take away. So, a lot of that had to do with the fact that I think that the city has, especially in a change of this magnitude, where you're basically going into someone and saying, we're taking away an additional 10 feet of your ability to build on your property, that the city has some obligation, I think, to contact these people. Even when you send the postcard, and by the way, I congratulate you for using part of your budget to send out that postcard, and I hope the other city council members will join in on that. But even once that postcard goes out, people are going to be getting a postcard saying, oh my God, I'm going to be losing 10 feet.
Well, genuinely, what would be the best way to share this information with everybody?
I think,
Sometimes people do signage, don't they, of hearings that are, I mean, the city has done.
well, I think the big issue here is education. I mean,
Yes.
no one here really, I mean, we all want to do what's best for the river.
And we all love the river, and the
We-
river's
we all love
beautiful,
the
and we
river.
want to protect it. I mean,
Right.
I don't see it as taking 10 feet away. I see it as like saying we're adding additional protection.
Do you think it's taking 10 feet away? You own riverfront property.
I have riverfront property, and to tell you the truth, I'm very, I just believe democracy is based on property rights. And I guess it was those government classes I took at Fairleigh Dickinson many years ago. And so if I'm going to make mine 30 feet, then I think that should happen on Davis Island and everywhere there's waterways. I don't think we should be isolated. I mean, I don't think somebody should come and say, you can't do this, any more than I think you can say, you can't remove your trees unless you're going to pay for me to keep them up. You know, because trees cost a lot of money. I mean, I have many, many, many trees. And so, and some of them have caused some problems. And so I've had to remove them. And the city's playing a role in my ability to remove the trees, and I love the trees, okay? I'm not going to take it out unless it's some bad thing, you know, it's ripping up the foundation, or it's now become a danger to the house or something like that. And I think if you're going to make a rule like that, then you have to come back and help me with it. So you want me to keep the trees here? Okay, well then come up here and prune them. I just have this, I have this thing, why am I more obligated to do that? And I just feel like if we're going to make a rule for everyone, then let's make a rule for everyone.
But you haven't had somebody build a McMansion next to you.
I
And
know.
suddenly you have, I haven't been to your
I'm
house,
here.
but I assume it's
Fran
lovely and
Davin's
it's
old house,
treed.
have you been there?
No, but anyway, think Thalia Potter's house. You know,
Okay.
Thalia Potter's house with all these great trees around it and
Yeah.
on the river. If I were Thalia and somebody next to me, you know, sort of cleared off the 20, well, now 20 feet next to the river, and put in all hardscape and built this, you know, 3-story large looming thing that's glaring and bright, it would really affect the character of my property.
Certainly.
And so that's what I'm trying to, that's the concern that was the impetus behind this. And I think your point is well taken. We didn't handle the communication well at all, and I think that we need to, and hear from people and hear what their concerns are. But the McMansion thing and the size of the boat docks, I think you'd really not be happy if that were next to you.
Well, I mean, and I've seen those go up, and as you know, we drafted overlay district in Seminole Heights to try and protect against those McMansions, and there are ways to do that. You don't have to take away setbacks. You can do other things like what we did was finish floor heights and roof pitches, so that you physically couldn't build what turns out to be a McMansion. You can designate it a scenic corridor and put some design standards on it, so that they can still build out to their property. The problem with taking away using setbacks is when you take away the ability to build on that land, you directly affect the property value. And especially in this day and age, people don't want to see their property values plummet even more than they are. It's a very, and you know this, Linda, it's a very strict property rights state, and there's lots of ways that out of the 900 people who are going to be affected by this, I'm sure one of them is going to find a smart lawyer and figure out a way under takings law or under Burt Harris or some other law to say that this is a taking and you've reduced my value.
Randy, if you think that people would be more amenable to design standards along the entirety of the Hillsborough River, I will link arms with you and march that march. But I'll tell
Yes,
you, design standards are very controversial, and there's no common.
FARs.
There's no common. There's a variety of communities up the river, and there's not as much common quality as there is within Seminole Heights. I mean, Seminole Heights was basically developed during a certain historical time frame, and there's more design similarity. As you go up and down the river, it is varied. And actually, Diane, our proposal starts north of the Columbus Bridge, so your neighborhood isn't even really directly affected by this.
Not now.
What?
Yeah, 'cause
Not
not now, but...
But you've already got the McMansions. I mean, frankly, you've got more hardscape south of the Columbus Bridge than north of it, which is why we didn't even try to protect your area, because we thought,
Too late.
Well, her area
Too late.
goes north of Columbus.
But the Columbus Bridge was the point.
Is the southern part. Well, her area is directly affected.
Yeah.
Let me let Phil
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah, let's
We've
talk.
been out talking Phil
That's
here.
okay. You know, I think we can talk for a long time about how things should be done and the details of how to get there. Let's talk about why we'd want to do this in the first place. You know, the Hillsborough River is the heart of our city. And those of us who are lucky, would you say, Randy, 900 folks, lucky enough to live on the river have a real privilege of being able to live there. And with that privilege does come a responsibility. It's not your average lot. It costs a lot more to be there. It's worth a lot more to be there. It's special. It is different. I've lived on the Hillsborough River for 18 years, really close to you, Louise. And it is something where you can see everything that makes living in Tampa Bay a very special thing. The Hillsborough River has been impaired for a long time. Friends of the River is a group that we started 9 years ago to fight for one special little thing that the river wasn't getting: water. It wasn't getting any water
And some
on a daily
mornings that
basis.
seems to still be true.
Well, it's getting a little bit of water, and it's going to get 3 times that in the next several years, and the life is coming back.
Yeah.
But guess what? It's still impaired. So the question is, what can we do as individual property owners to help the city? Because the city is behind the 8 ball. The city is going to have to clean up this river. It's going to have to improve the water quality, and everybody who lives on the river in some way or another is contributing to the water quality, good or bad. The whole reason for environmentally for setbacks is to have a greater amount of pervious surface so that whatever runs off of your yard sinks into your yard and doesn't run off into the river. We don't want dirt to get into the river. Now, the city has spent a lot of money, and they're going to spend more on putting in filtration systems that catch that sediment, that dirt. But they can only do it. They can't put one off of everybody's, each 900 of our yards that go in, you know, to the water. We have to do something ourselves. What if we have, as someone mentioned, a shoreline buffer with plants that can absorb the dirt, and if we choose to use fertilizer, the fertilizer, then that's going to help catch that and help keep the river clean. It's all about the water quality, and water quality for people that live on the river is all about quality of life. The river is coming back to life, and the quality of life in Tampa is improving. And the question is, what can we do as individual property owners and citizens that's not going to raise taxes for everybody in the community, but is going to be something that will help us all? And there are a number of different things that we can do. Some will be harder than others, and some will be things that people need to know why it's important. What difference does it make? One thing that Linda mentioned is fertilizers, okay? This is something that is a completely different topic, okay? But there are going to be recommendations coming out next week that say, if you live on the water, any body of water, let's not apply fertilizer within 10 feet of the water. This is now in effect.
Now that seems like a reasonable
It seems
idea.
reasonable
Let me-
because
let me
it's
grab
probably
this
going to wash
call,
up.
though.
Okay.
There's somebody been waiting. You're on. Speak up.
Hold on, let me turn my TV down. Hi, you pretty much just answered my question because I was calling to see, you know, as far as environmental concerns are, the issue of the environment, what we can do. But I was also wondering, because I notice a lot of people break these laws along the riverside, and what is being done to enforce some of these laws and rules as far as protecting our riverbanks? Because sometimes I look around and I see that nothing is really being done about it. Do we need to maybe take a stand more and bring out into the open and educate the public, or perhaps enforce penalties? That's, I guess, what my question is. What are we doing to enforce the protection of the riverbanks? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good question.
I can answer it.
That would be for you, Linda.
Well,
I just feel like I've been up there 12 years, and I think I've never met a bunch of people as much committed to the environment as everyone who lives on the river. I mean, they're just like crazy about, obviously we bought up there because we want water, we wanted the river, we want the big old trees, we want the big old houses. We're into preservation more than I think anybody is. Is that right or wrong?
I'll tell you, Louise, I mean, the problem is not the people along the river. Most of those people do have a dedication to to the river. The problem is the storm drains that are just
Yeah.
all over the city.
The drainage.
And if you want to look, and Phil, I'm sure you'll agree with this, that the biggest source of bad things going into the river is not the fertilizer, if any, coming off of a riverfront property. It's everything that goes down those storm drains. The oil, the guy who washes his car, the illegal dumping that goes down there. And there's nothing to catch it. That goes in that hole, and it goes down a pipe, and it goes right out the river.
I can cite one good example of something we've done recently that is extraordinarily great. 40th Street's been widened, and the new bridge that goes over 40th Street has natural catchment basins, natural cleaning filtration systems. It's like, this is what to do. Meanwhile, we have, 4 other bridges that go over the river where the oil from the roads dumps directly into the water, which is exactly the wrong thing to do. And where the interstate goes over the river, all that stuff goes into the water.
It's not just the
Has
interstate,
anybody
it's-
done a study to see whether it's the residents that the
can
problem
guarantee
comes
it's
from, or
residents.
does it more come
It's
from what you're
everything.
just saying?
It's everything. It's everything together. It's like everything about our environment. Literally, it's all downstream. We have to address this on every level. And the first part is education. The lady on the phone nailed it.
Right, and our mayor, Friends of the River and the Sierra Club have been asking her and her predecessor for years to do more for stormwater filtration. But guess what? It costs a lot of money. They're doing all they can afford to do. Our mayor had the guts to institute a stormwater tax here because some of the community investment tax money was spent on other things other than that type of infrastructure, if you remember. And what she is doing is filtration downtown. Why downtown? Not because the business community is there, but because downtown has the highest percentage of impervious surface. It has the highest percentage of asphalt and concrete, so very little of the rainwater soaks into the ground in downtown. So you better catch it because it's going to really cause a lot of pollution there. It's not, might not be my neighborhood's priority, but it's the city's priority because the impact there is the greatest. But we cannot
And the
filter
city itself
all of the
contributed
stormwater.
to so much of this because they built
Yeah.
parking garages on the,
Well,
all
and
that.
we're learning.
Riverwalk.
But-
We're
oh, right,
learning.
The
yeah.
Riverwalk.
Actually, the
would you-
Riverwalk is addressing some of it because part of the creation of it included not a hardening of the shoreline,
Right.
but a, what is that called? Where it's softened and it's a more natural shoreline.
Right, right.
Phil, you were showing me something. If you're going to take it out and show
Well,
it to
I
everybody.
could, because the question is, how do we get there? What are we going to do? I've got neighbors across the river from me. They live in Sulphur Springs, and their house was built in 1920, and it's right on the river. Now, would you allow that to happen now? Of course not. What are you going to do? Are you going to pick it up and move it? No, you're not going to do that. The question is, what can we do? The guy who owns the lot is actually very expert in native plants. So around that house, he has a very nice shoreline buffer. But if you're going to build a patio, if you're going to build a deck, if you're going to have a driveway or something,
What is this?
this is something which could be part of the solution. This is a material that's now being developed which you can drive on, you can park on, you can walk on.
Looks like river rock.
It looks like river rock. It's got river rock in it. This happens to be made from recycled tires. They are now developing types of concrete, asphalt, and this material, which is called FlexiPave, which is pervious. Okay, so you can have your cake and eat it too.
Oh,
This isn't a
fabulous.
cake, but this is being tested now by the Stormwater Management Academy at the University of Central Florida, and the Department of Environmental Protection is developing standards that will be coming down in the next year or two that will say that in order to meet your water quality standards, the bar is being raised, for instance. The river's already failed, but it's going to get a F+ if we don't do something to help it. But when it rains, is that going to run off of your driveway, or is it going to go into the ground? And what happens when it rains and you have this kind of material is, well, your yard absorbs it. So you're not adding any pollution to the river or to the city anywhere. This is coming on, and hopefully in the next year you're going to see that this type of material is available on the marketplace so people can put in whatever they want to. Not a structure, but any kind of a surface that they want to use in their backyard. And if the city certifies it, then it would be maintained as a pervious. So the 30% of your yard that can be impervious would not include something that you do that is still maintains its
great.
porosity. So
That is another point on this, the 30%. We didn't talk about that. That's another point.
The
that you-
impervious surface?
Yeah. I
Right
mean, you talk
now-
about the setback, but not this 30%.
Well, can you define that for us? How that would work?
Hardscape as opposed to something
Well,
that's,
no, I mean, how is it, I mean, like,
How do you-
here's a lot,
Yeah.
and it's a square, and here's the river, and is it 30% of the entire lot can only be pervious? Is it 30% of, I mean, I was reading the definition, it was kind of
Yeah, it was kind of
hard for me to
confusing.
understand, so.
Like, in other words, if you have a lot and it's 100 by 100,
then 33, then 30% of it
30%,
needs to,
300.
it needs to be porous to water. That's what the meaning is.
that would, so that would
you have the
automatically reduce
old-fashioned-
the amount of the size of your McMansion if you were going to
Well, it depends how you build it. I mean, if you had an old-fashioned house or a house that was raised up, it could even have, you could have, I mean, I wouldn't want water under my house, but you could have it under your house. But the idea is that not the entire lot is paved. And Louise, you said something really interesting, which is, well, if it's going to be true for the river, how about the houses on the water?
the bay, yeah.
Well, if you go to the end of,
Martinique?
I was going to say Tennyson, or
Okay.
one of those fingers, there's a house that's, it looks like a hotel, and it is completely hardscape. I don't know how they did it. I guess it's because it's not against the rules.
Wow.
It is 3 stories high. It fills every square inch. It is all hardscape, and all I can say is it must be dumping a lot of water somewhere, because there's not an inch for the water to percolate down into the soil. And that's why a material like what you just demonstrated would be great, because they could, if they still wanted every square inch paved, at least the water could percolate down. What I'm trying to do is not have all this. Currently, all the city's storm drains go directly into the water. That is not what you want. That is not what you'd engineer today. But when we built the city, 100 years ago, that was the system. So all the oil, all the fertilizer, all the bad stuff goes directly into the river and the bay, 100%. What we're trying to do is have this pervious surface on people's property that catches the rainwater, and then there's a natural filtration system, and so you don't have the pollution.
Now, obviously, people need to understand the relationship between what runs off their backyard and what happens out in the water. Fertilizer, it's pretty simple, okay? And this is why the Tampa Bay Estuary Program is going to be asking communities like Tampa and St. Pete and Bradenton to adopt some new codes that are now in effect in Sarasota and Naples and
Charlotte, I think.
Charlotte County, Sanibel, places like that. Very
Places
simple.
that are enlightened.
Right. Basically, we get rain 4 months of the year. If you put fertilizer on your lawn in those 4 months, it's probably, a lot of it's going to wash off. And if you live on the water, it's definitely going to get into the water. So use a time-release type of fertilizer that's now available. Instead, put it down in the spring, put it down in the fall. Because that fertilizer that makes your grass grow makes the algae grow in the water. We have harmful algae blooms that kill fish, called fish kills, in the river, in the lakes, in the ponds. This is a worldwide problem. Before the Olympics in China, they had to haul 1 million tons out of the sailing venue. This is happening all over the world. Our springs that we are special here in Florida are getting clogged up. So this is being addressed everywhere. And it's very simple. Nitrogen makes stuff grow. Keep it out of the water, okay? Keep it, so watch how you use it. And one thing that's very helpful that's now, again, part of the code in some of these communities in Florida is have a shoreline buffer. And this is all about education. What if I don't have grass that I fertilize, what do? Use a spreader that has a deflector shield so you can get within 3 feet. Have a low maintenance zone of 6 feet, okay? And have a no fertilizer zone of 10 feet. Try to have plants that once you establish them, they don't require fertilizer. That's going to capture more of the fertilizer from your lawn further away, and also it's going to be material in an area that you don't have to put so much fertilizer at all on. So this is one of the sensible solutions that's going to improve our water quality, that's going to help our city meet the standards that it really is behind the 8 ball in meeting, without costing us more in taxes, because you can't put the infrastructure in otherwise that's going to have the same effect.
Diane?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
It seems like there's two things, and I wasn't, I mean, the McMansions, we're talking about pollution, and we're talking about McMansions.
Right.
Yes.
So, we're coming in, and, I have already talked to the Heights, the residents of the Heights. They don't want this zoning to go through. So
They don't want the setback?
The setback.
no, they do, yeah, they don't want the setbacks to happen.
Uh-huh.
Every resident I've talked to has said no, and you know we still have to work with each other, even though we want to protect the river, but we also want the residents to like what the plan is. So you're saying this could be a solution, but then you're saying that I think sounds like to me it's more of the McMansions because you have something.
It's both.
But that's what I'm saying. It seems like the McMansions is the most
The most egregious problem.
most the plan that you don't like, because there's a solution right there. We can work with our neighbors and say, we don't want you to build up to the McMansions. the people
It isn't your
online.
neighbors, it's the builders, and I won't be in politics and name them on TV, but I can point out there are like a handful of builders that build these. They look like they've given these houses miracle grow. They're like this. They're like, there had been a 1,200 square foot house there, and now there's a 5,000 square foot house there. And, maybe the economy will kind of slow things down, but
But how
it's-
many 52 houses along the river that did along mine? I know there's some, but how many did you notice? Because I've been down the river, I kayak down it. I think it's beautiful. There might be one or two houses that are, but I've lived here 17 years. I don't. When neighbors say they don't want it, I've heard this time and time again. How are you gonna talk to the neighbors and tell them that sorry? We know you don't want it, but we're going to do it anyway.
And we know there's other, and the other problem is we know there's some other causes of this. Oh, we have a caller. You're on Speak Up.
Yes, hi Louise. I'm watching the show and I'm just totally clueless. What do you guys mean when you say McMansions?
Houses that are really so big that they dwarf the lot. It's a term that Linda just said. There were places where there's a house that's only 1,200 square foot, and then somebody knocks it down and builds a 5,000 square foot house there, leaving very little property in the front and the back and on the sides. And it's so cemented over that water has no place to go.
Oh, okay.
All right?
All right, thank you.
Thank you. You want to add to that? Did I say that right?
No, that was perfect. Lot line to lot line is really what a McMansion is. But the problem is yeah, we all want to work against preventing the McMansions. Not just along the river, but also in all parts of the neighborhood. No one likes to come out of bed and have their sunlight blocked because of the McMansion next to them. But it seems like a disproportionate response to the people along the river. You're taking away essentially 10 feet. When I think that we need to study this more to see if there's other measures that we can do to prevent this kind of excess growth.
Randy,
along
that's
the river.
fine. This seemed to me, as opposed to design guidelines, which get very esoteric,
Right.
this seemed to me like something people
was
could
only
get their
a-
mind around.
Unfortunately, they've gotten their minds around it the wrong way. What they've got their minds around is the fact that they're going to lose 10 feet of buildable space.
Well, let me ask you something. Do you think it would be more amenable? I'm not dug in. I don't know if you can feel it, but I am not dug in about this.
No,
I'm
that's-
just into protecting the river. So, do you think that people would be more amenable to keeping what they have now, which is a 20-foot setback, but saying that the 10 feet closest to the river needs to be not turf?
I don't know how you're
That
going
wouldn't
to
bother
enforce
me.
that.
That's the way it is anyway. Oh, we got another caller.
Yeah.
You're on Speak Up.
Hi, I think this show is great, the dialogue that you've got going on between the two different groups of people. I think that's great. I wondered if you could tell me, what are they doing in places like Safety Harbor and Palm Harbor that have a lot of waterfront property, and just what maybe are some of their setback rules, if you know some of the issues that they have been having maybe, and some of their solutions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And,
I don't
And
know.
I was thinking of Danish Shores when you said that.
Temple Terrace is the
Temple
one I know.
Terrace.
They have a
But
lot
Temple
of,
Terrace
Terrace
has
isn't
a
in
but they
really
have very
deep-
long lots.
They have
Right.
very deep lots, and so they have a lot of
They have
softening.
600 feet of lot.
And
you
then
mean,
they have
for
places in Pinellas County where I think, being judgmental, it's very unattractive, where it's all hardscape, hardened shorelines, hardened backyards, it's chain link fences. It's like not, to me, to me, what's special about the river is that it isn't all hard. It's very, much of it is just gentle and beautiful. And that's such a special quality, particularly in an urban area, that that's what you want to protect. So what I think our most productive conversation could be tonight is how do we approach protecting it?
Yeah, and we've heard a few things that are already interesting. The stormwater problem, the bridges, that what you just said, what happened on 40th Street needs to happen in other areas. How do we do other things that could be beneficial to the river?
Costs money. That's the problem.
Some of them don't, though. That's the thing. What,
I mean, the fertilizer,
Right.
which is certainly voluntary, and we can do that along the river, but it's the guy 3 blocks in who puts his fertilizer on his yard, and it goes into the storm drain. The disproportionate effect on the
But
river.
he's not on the river at all.
He's not on the
He's
river.
not on the river,
It
right.
flows right down
But
into that storm drain.
he's upstream, he's uphill, and
Right.
well, actually,
That's
Randy,
true.
if the communities that have put in place these kinds of codes are asking everybody not to use the
and they
fertilizer in the rainy season, okay?
And this will be coming before City Council, and I'd love you all to weigh in on it when it does.
Because
Because
it's-
it's going to take a lot of community support to get it through.
We've
It's
got somebody else
it's
trying to...
education. I mean, I
That's
think
right.
the city needs to
Absolutely.
focus on education.
Right.
You're on speak up.
Yeah, question. Is it correct that under this new setback, what do you want to call it, the walls will no longer be allowed? And if that's true, why in Riverwalk are they talking about building a pier that will go out over the river?
Seawalls.
Where are they talking about that? I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
In Riverwalk, they're talking about putting
Downtown, the river.
a
Okay.
kind of a pier, a dock over the river, and yet I also understand that this.
This will prohibit you from having a seawall, is what you're saying,
Yeah.
right?
No, this
Okay,
doesn't
is it-
address seawalls.
Let's have her address that, okay.
It-
Thank you.
The proposal that's coming out doesn't address seawalls, although I believe that, because the river already is what it is. I mean, nowadays, I don't think you could build a hardened seawall, but the hardened seawalls were built, 50, 80 years
And
ago.
now they have these other devices or
There's a
some kind of a lime rock mixture in a bag and they,
They're building one
But-
across, they just built one across the river, across from my neighborhood. They just put one up,
a seawall?
a seawall.
But
It
they
used
could
to
use
be-
that
it used to
material
be-
that he just pointed
I don't know
out,
what
could
they
they
use,
not?
but it used to be no seawalls there. People could take their dogs down and go straight into the river, and now that there's a seawall.
Is it a public space or a privately held space?
I think it's, I'm not really sure because it's on the other side, but I do remember walking my dogs down that way, and I thought how sad that all that marsh that used to be there is now just a wall.
Well, I
Well,
think
she
you're
was
getting
just
to the...
asking about a contradiction, though. If you're not
Yeah.
allowed to build a seawall anymore in the river, is that true?
What's being built downtown is cantilevered. And what we're talking about is dealing with neighborhoods north of Columbus Drive, not downtown, which is already hardened. I mean, we've softened a few places like Coton-Shobi Park and some of the other places along the Riverwalk. But basically, where you've already got a hardened seawall, the Riverwalk is cantilevered over it, like to get out underneath the bridge. It floats.
Okay, so that it has some, okay.
And the discharge, the runoff from the Riverwalk goes into the river.
Where it all goes now anyway.
Where it all goes.
But the new park downtown's better. The new park that's going to be next to the art museum, it is capturing the
But
you know,
this is why, though, I think the city needs more outreach, because for the average person who's sitting at, on the riverfront property in Riverside Heights or Summer Heights or Sulphur Springs, and they're saying, well, I've just lost 10 feet of my buildable space and my property value may go down because of that, and the city's out to build the Riverwalk, and, well, it's too late, so they can do it, and I'm paying the price.
But-
It's outreach, Lynn. It's education.
well,
and
but don't you think that the whole value of a house on a river is premised on the quality of the river, and some parts of it are, in my opinion, higher quality than others, based on the aesthetics. And your property will be worth more if it isn't next to something that's really hideous. So.
Well, that is true.
That's probably
that's,
true.
That's true,
It's true.
just not
But
along the river. anyway.
the impact on the specific property owners to accept this is not going to make the world a difference. That you know, because you've got all these other situations and problems. You've got the runoff and other people using fertilizer and so forth. So we say, okay, we're not going to build or do anything on these last, we're going to accept this buffer zone. And in reality, what proof is there that we're going to increase the benefits of the river unless everybody else gets in the act too?
Well, let's talk about that. All over America, different communities have been doing this, and the average is really about 30 feet. Some have done more, some have done less. The Swift Mud swim program.
You should say what that stands for.
Right. I wish I knew.
Southwest Water
Southwest.
District.
Yeah, right, of course. They're saying that actually it should be 49 to 66 feet in municipal conditions, not in a natural setting, but in an urban setting. Now, how do we get to 50 to 66 feet? Can we do that? Or is there some way that we can determine? You know, like I said, this is a global problem, and there is research and development going on. I see the research in my work to develop materials that homeowners can use and use in their yard, in their backyards, along bodies of water, that will enable them to use that and still maintain the quality of the water that they happen to be blessed to live along. So this is a matter of working out the solutions for this.
Let me throw out a wild idea. It involves a lot of math, which is not my strongest suit. But what if you had a lot that was of a certain scale, like there's some lots that are 200 feet,
Right.
that you would have a greater setback, and if you had a smaller scale lot, you'd have a lesser setback.
But the
What would you
problem,
think of
the
that?
problem you've got is that, like, I own two houses. One of them's closer up to the street. The other one, the one I live in, is set way back. I mean, I have a driveway that you could put, I don't know, what do you think, 20 cars in there? You know where I live? I mean, it's this big circular driveway, but of course there's plants on I mean, it's just this one impervious surface that, you know, is there, but then, you know, I have native plants everywhere, right? Okay, so that house is way back. Now, it happens that my lot is long enough to, and it would not really be a problem for me to have a 30-foot buffer. I've got everything I need in there, and I don't need to do anything over there. But other people are not going to have that because they have their houses far set back. And so what are they going to, you know, so it may not be right on their street to pull their house up so close to the street. Do you know what I mean? It's just, we're so odd. And I think that's the beauty of the whole river area, that none of our houses were like a developer
uniform.
did them. You know, they're all different. It's a great neighborhood for all that reason, and they're in and out and wherever, and you know, so that's the dilemma of it.
Well, I mean, the question.
That's why I think that design standards would just make people nuts.
Okay, let me withdraw that. I didn't mean to throw that one out, but let's talk about the legal impact of this. Okay, so someone has a house that's inside what would now be the 10-foot setback. I assume they'll be legal non-conforming.
Yes.
And at some
And
point,
any of this just applies to new construction. Did I say that?
well, does
No.
it? I mean,
Yeah.
okay. So I
Yeah,
have a house.
it's what you just said. If something
it's legal
exists, it's legal
non-conforming.
non-conforming.
Right. So
If it already exists, but
Yeah.
as soon as I build a bathroom in the house, if the main structure is in the setback, I've got to get a variance.
No, not if it's in the house. If you add on a bathroom.
right.
If it's in the
Right,
house.
right. In other words, if I increase any part of the footprint of the building,
Correct.
then I have to go get a variance in order to
If you
bring
put the
it.
bathroom in back.
Right. Or if I put it in the side or the front, because my house is in the setback. So in order for that to be bring in a zoning conformance, I have to get a variance. Would I not? I mean,
Yeah,
In
because
the
it's
side or
not
the
just
front,
about.
it wouldn't, but
It isn't just about new construction, because I've never built a deck on my, a dock on my property. There's a deck and dock on the other property that I own. I would love to have one of those here. I'm just not doing it yet. But suppose I did want to do
then that would
now
be
I
new
can't.
construction.
That would be new construction.
And by the way, there are rules. When I built my dock, it was a function of how wide is the river at that place. I couldn't build a dock as big as my neighbor down the river because the river happens to be narrow where I live. Just like if I happen to have a very deep lot, I could have a bigger house and a bigger driveway because of the proportional aspect of this. We have those rules in effect now.
Okay.
They've governed us. We're just talking about tweaking them a little bit because everybody who lives on the river does get the privilege of living there, but you also have a lot of rules that you have to adhere to that you don't have other places.
Like you can't dump batteries in it.
Right. That would be
Well,
bad.
I hope not.
But and that raises a good point because there's also wetland setbacks.
Right.
There's FEMA requirements. I mean, and there's all sorts of things right now that will prevent a McMansion. I don't know how the McMansion that you saw got put up, but
There's one right up the street from
We ought to look
Phil
up
that
who
is
owns
a
it.
I,
wall
I,
Figure that
I
out.
think I know what
Wait,
house
we
that
should
is.
look up who owns
And
it.
near John Ovink, there's this awful thing. I mean, it's like, it's so out of character, and it's so offensive in that.
But
in
have you
that-
taken a
I don't
poll to
wanna
see how many
legit-
other people are thinking of it offends them?
Believe me.
Well, I'm saying, do you think the people on the river would actually do that? I mean, have you had
someone did.
talk to someone did, but
Someone
that's
did.
one person. Have you surveyed the other people and said, well, is this what you're looking forward to doing? Because I think you're taking the people who are building the McMansions and you're penalizing the people who love the river and wanted to see it have a comeback.
I miss
Who
the
don't
logic
want
in
a
Who
that.
don't want a McMansion.
Yeah.
I mean,
In other
I've
words,
talked to the
they can
neighbors.
build it to setbacks, but do so in a more appropriate way.
Right.
As opposed to the monster fortress that someone
Right.
put up.
And that's
So
why the
what is your
30% rule, I
suggestion?
guess. You're trying to say, well, conserve some of the property rather
Right.
than
Right.
just take and, I don't know, change some
I don't
lot
think there's a lot of
line.
people that live on the river. The ones I've talked to, they actually started the association that I now run, and they're saying they love the river. They started the association, but they're older and they're tired and they can't fight anymore. So and they're saying, and they're like, we don't want this. So how do you? I mean, I understand. I would love the river. I want it to come back. I want it to make a full recovery. Except I want my neighbors on the river to be happy and not. So I think it's a great idea. I think it just needs to be reviewed and more tweaking and find something where we can come together and work together on it so that there's not McMansions. I would love to go down the river and not see a big house and taking up all the thing. I think you have a great idea. I just think again, as Randy said, we're volunteers. We to ask us to send us an email and say, hey, you better get your Riverside Heights residents, prepared for what this is about to happen. That's taken a lot for me and my board members to get out there and warn them. And we all have lives, and to put that on us to do that.
It seems to me that your point is very well taken, and that what we've done right now is stop moving ahead with anything until we can talk to people. It seems to me that probably what we need to do is is go to each of the 12 organizations along the river. If there are 12 organizations, we start in January and do it through December, and meet with everybody and find out what the concerns are and begin to educate them about the fertilizer issue, which is huge, which is really about personal responsibility, and people can get on that immediately, and hear what people's concerns are. To me, legislating aesthetics is the most impossible thing. It's really about educating people so that they don't do the ridiculously hideous thing that's offensive in the first place.
And Diane, I completely agree. We've been meeting in Sierra Club with neighborhood associations on the waterfront all over Tampa Bay to talk about the fertilizer ordinance, because it is something that doesn't sound like it makes sense until you understand the impact. And wead love to come talk to you.
Absolutely,
your group.
we'd love to have you.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you.
We're down to about 5 minutes, so if I give each one of you a minute to add something that you might have missed and you want to make sure is said to our viewers, that would be great. But I do want to mention that I did a show a few years ago on the desal plant down in South County, and there was a professor from HCC who could give a lot of information about where water went and where the salt went and all that. And so he was able to actually bring forth, some other alternate plans because of the fact that they had built it in the wrong place and this kind of thing. So maybe we could get some of those guys in. But anyway, let me start with you, Randy. Have you got a minute that you want to?
Sure. I think that I appreciate Linda being able to say that we need to speak to the neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
That's really the key here, because I think that the current formulation of this ordinance is a little bit of overkill. I think that if we get together, we all work together, we can come up with a plan that equally balances the property rights of people and the fact that we all want the river to be a great place to both live on and travel through. it truly is an asset to the city.
I got to move too.
Yep.
Dianne, I'm sorry.
Again, I'd like to thank you all for having me and being able to, like I said, I just took this position in August. I love where I live. I love the river. I want us to work together and make this work.
Absolutely.
And on behalf of Friends of the River and the Sierra Club, we appreciate all the neighborhood associations. We want to work with you, share with you the scientific knowledge that we have from what's going on around the world to find the solutions to bringing back the heart of Tampa and making it as beautiful and wonderful a place to live along as it possibly can be.
Phil, we're going to do a show just on that.
All right.
Good.
Okay. And you'll bring in
And
different people.
now a show and tell.
Okay.
Today is Monday. Wednesday and Friday, the Urban Charrette, a group of architects, landscape architects, planners, are inviting the community to figure out how to create a sustainable Tampa. It's called the Sustainable Design Assessment Team. It's here, it's free. I'll leave info with you all.
Where is it?
It's going to be at the Stetson Law School downtown
on
on
Tampa
Wednesday
Street.
night and Friday night. The idea is to look at Tampa's assets. Tomorrow we're taking the experts from out of town canoeing down the river so they'll see it firsthand, and then to help neighborhoods be empowered to plan their own future. So this couldn't be more timely. And I think the
That's great.
communication is everything. And it's ultimately up to the neighbors to fight for the qualities they want.
And that website is sdattampa.com.
Thank you.
You know, I'm really glad that you came, Linda, because I think everybody knows your heart's always in the right place when it comes to these environmental things. And look at Kennedy's almost happening. I mean, how long have you? Every time I go down Kennedy and something good happens, I go, Linda. I just say Linda every single time I see something good, a building go up that's in good shape, because you sit there and do fight for these things, and we know your heart's in the right place. And even if we're a little bit like, hey, why us? Why my property? Why not somebody else's? We do want to hear you out and hear what this is about, and we do care about our river. So I do appreciate all of you coming down, and we'll probably hear more about this soon, right? If you have another meeting on it. So we'll probably all be there, right, at the city council?
I'm
certainly
going
hope
to
so.
go to all the different neighborhood associations.
All right,
and hear what
that'll be
folks have to
great.
say.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Speak Up. Good night.